Welcome to Conscious Eye, living in authentic connection and harmony with self, others, and the world. Featuring Ravi and Savitri. Hi, Ravi.
Hi, Savitri. It's good to be back with you.
It's great to be back. And did you bring your coffee this morning?
I did. I've got
Great.
my coffee cup. Yep. And yeah, we're back. I know
And
that
ready? Mm-hmm.
that last episode was really challenging for me in
It
many
was for me as well.
many ways. So this is new new energy, new episode, new energy, but a continuation of that conversation that we were having um on karma.
Yes. And uh, although it wasn't exactly the most uh, beneficial example that we might have had for karma. Last week, we did have our episode around a lot of karma, both individual and collective.
Mm, mm. We all know the saying karma's a bitch. And and I'm kind of like, no, no, it's not. And that's very patriarchal because there's no judgment with karma.
Right. And it's really just a reflection of the actions and the thoughts that we personally produce during the time that we're here on the planet. While we're on our dharmic path, performing our duty, creating our purpose, and living it. Yeah.
Cause and effect, rather than maybe there's a perceived sense of judgment around it. There seems to be, at least that's what that expression says to me. So just a little, that's my little 2 cents in of this episode of is that um yeah, that really rings to me as a bit patriarchal. And that really the reality is what karma is a portal to the human experience. It's what we come
Yes.
here for.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And, if you think about karma and dharma, because I think some people get confused about it because it's so interwoven. You can think about dharma as being your purpose. I'm really going simplistic here.
Mhm.
And karma has a couple different ways to show up. One is it can be from, if you have this philosophical approach to life, past lives from ancestors, things that happened prior to your birth. And then you have the present karma that happens during your birth that then might be resolved while you're here now, but also might be sent forward for another lifetime. So if you're just thinking about this lifetime and what is going on now, as you go through the dharmic path, what happens? We get challenges, we get choices, lessons show up, cycles show up. Oh, I did that lesson before, but I guess my response to it didn't go well. So I'm getting it again, and let's
Mhm.
see what I can do with it. And I bring that to, learning the piano. It really feels dharmic to me, where over and over and over again, you hit that challenge in the music. It's your karma, right? To figure out a resolution for how to make your dharmic path or the melody flow with the rhythm. And
Mhm.
so yes, it is about actions, and it's about choices, and it's about energy, and it's about awareness, and it's about Maya. We have so many different things that factor into dharma and karma that we get to talk
Yeah.
about today. Yeah.
Yeah, I think some of the key points you've already mentioned. So there's the rebirth, reincarnation, or
Mhm.
samsara is in many traditions linked to karma. But the idea of this cause and effect, action, reaction, that's universal.
Mhm.
So I think, I was raised in a very conservative Christian household, not evangelical, but very staunch Christian home. And, there's that term, you reap what you sow, is something that you hear often in that upbringing. And there's that sense, that idea of action and reaction, cause and effect. So it's just a chain of events that every action puts in motion. And
Mm.
it's dharma as well, is cause and effect. It's that action that we create, but it's created in service. It's created not through ego, but it creates that, it's that creation from a place of service in alignment with divine, that no longer creates that karmic wake behind it.
Mhm.
Intention matters, I think, is another key point
Yes, that's really important
of
because a
what.
lot of times we make choices, but we don't have an intention that would maybe give us the karmic result that we get, right? So the intention helps to ameliorate it a little bit.
Right. We talked a little bit about that. Well, I feel like it connects a little bit with what we talked about last week, where you can
Mm.
say one thing, but your intention behind the words, if that doesn't match, there's hollowness. It's empty. And that is seen eventually, that what is or is not born through the fruits of actions. Um, there's intention behind that matters, that puts that, it's the energy of intention that's behind it.
Yes, and we talk about it as kind of a superfluous thing, but it's something people actually go to. If we want to talk about our New Year's resolutions,
Right.
they are intentions for how or what we are going to do, our purpose for the upcoming year. And also, as you know, in practices, every practice, we either bring an intention, a sankalpa, a resolve, something that is important to us, or we have one that shows up that day during that time. So that has a lot of what you're saying about, is it going to be empty, or do we support it and substantiate it with a true directive thought in addition to the action?
Or is it unconscious? Because there is
Right.
also just the unconscious reaction to
Mhm.
life's happenings, or uh, where it's the fish swimming in the ocean, the two young guys swimming next to each other, and the old fish swims by and is like, "Hey, how's the water?" And they're like, "What water?" When we're immersed in our own Maya, we can't
Mhm.
see the Maya we're immersed in. And so that, action born of, this is the only way I know how to respond, or this is an unconscious reaction. So there's that awareness as well that plays into attention. We have to intention, must be aware of our own reactions before we can um, really form responses.
That brings up a question that I've been contemplating quite a bit because I've had some people ask me this question. I don't know that I have a really sustainable or supported answer, but the question is this: if someone performs an action and maybe bringing in the mirror effect in addition to the cause and effect, karma mirrors back to us what it is that we do. So we might have good actions and we might not. And so we get those things mirrored back to us. But the question is this: it's, if I don't have awareness of the ramifications of, or don't have an intention that supports my action, will I receive karma? And I'm not sure I know how to respond to that. Do you have any thoughts about that? If you do it in ignorance, does that mean you're innocent and don't receive the fruits of that action?
That's a good, interesting question. And I think that there's different, of course, ways to look at it. I
Mm-hmm.
think from, of course, again, my background coming from
Mm-hmm.
Christian background where you are born, we're born as sinners, but there's this age of accountability, which imagine that hits right around puberty, right? So
Mm-hmm.
between, birth until you hit that age of awareness, you're innocent. You might do wrong actions, but they're forgiven because you don't know any better. Where is
Mm-hmm.
that point at which we should know better but don't do better? And then you play into, well, many of us, because of the society and culture we've grown up in, experience arrested development. And so perhaps our emotions haven't evolved to the point where we can understand always that what our actions are setting into motion.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make us innocent, or should we know better? I think
Yeah.
that's part of what we're here for, is to explore questions, not necessarily find answers. However,
Right.
that does tie into that next, I think, key point of karma, is it implies personal responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
It implies what, and again, in Christianity maybe is referred to as free will. That things may happen to us, or things may go a certain way, but we have the free will to choose how we respond and what we do with that, which is something that is, we talk about, we've talked a lot about when we mention astrology, because I think there's a
Mm-hmm.
misconception that if you believe in astrology, that just means that you believe that you're at the will and whim of the universe, rather
Mm-hmm.
than understanding that it's an understanding of the energies that we're working with,
Mm-hmm.
and that allows us to make choices based on that understanding.
Right. It's just a blueprint of the energetic gifts that you receive at the time of your birth that bring you to the planet and form you in a way that you can have this lifetime. Yes, I agree with that. And free will is a big part of that because it shows us the opportunity. I think when we talked about it, we talked about how you have a destination in mind, but there might be plenty of different ways to get there. You could fly, you could take the train, you could drive. And once you do that, you can choose within those categories how you might get there. And I think you used an illustration of being in a beautiful, pristine road where everything is lovely and easy, or now you're stuck in a place with jackhammers under construction. And some of that is the karma that comes to us too with that. But uh, getting back to that question, there was another thing that popped for me when you started responding. I was thinking that's really a gift in the way that that belief system is constructed, is that you have some growth time where you can make some mistakes and then they don't really stick or
Mm.
bring anything back to you. In an energetic framework, if we just think about it as pure energy, if someone performs an action, be it one of benevolence and service, or be it one of harm, and doesn't have the framework of the intention, or maybe doesn't realize that they have said or done something harmful to someone, or even said or done something beneficial to someone, doesn't the mirror still bring that energy back to us? And so we do receive something, perhaps, and I'm saying this hypothetically because I'm not sure I have that answer, and I might want to do a little more research on it at some point to know some more. And although you were innocent, oblivious, wrapped in Maya, whatever it was, whenever that happened and you performed that action, that thought, um, what happens to that energy? Because it's still something that you put out into the universe.
Mm-hmm. And I guess if we look at it as that constant flow of energy, and the
Mm.
we think of the Kundalini system, right?
Hmm.
We generate that Kundalini energy, work it through the chakras, it expands out into the universe and it comes back in and back right back in through the root chakra. And there's that constant cycle. We can't deny that energy is constantly, we're putting it out there and it's coming back. What I think is maybe the more simplified misconception is that it's going to look the same way it did putting it out there. We may experience things in life that are difficult and challenging for us, and we don't know why, and they don't seem to be related to something. But when we figure that out, when the code is cracked, they disappear, they dissipate. So I think one thing to understand is you can be fully a rotten person inside
Hmm.
and have nice things. That doesn't mean that, from an outsider's perspective, your life might not look nice or wonderful or um, uh, admirable, something that, might be something that you look at and that you want. That's not how it works. It's not that simple, which I think some people are like, hey, if you're doing all this bad, shouldn't you be getting all bad back? So the way that energy is transformed and how that process is and how we hold it in our body, that's all part of that process. And it's not about I think this again, is going to ask some people to challenge their belief system or
Yes.
consider something that they don't believe, but at least from the yogic tradition, from the I come to the I go, there is no question of where we go after here. It's about how we're living here and how we want to incarnate again. What lessons do we want to learn? How do we evolve? And that karma is the gateway to the human experience, which is an experience that allows us to evolve our soul and our whole being. If you come from that, philosophy, or if you can entertain that philosophy, because I will acknowledge truly, any belief, it has as much proof and validity as another, because
Sure.
none of us have really, made it out or back to say it. So you know, take
Yeah.
that with the grain of salt that you will, but there's that idea, it's a much more complex idea than I think we've been entertaining in the Western world for quite some time.
Yes, in some ways, I think that's true. And when I think about it from an energetic perspective, which is what I mentioned before, is even if I'm innocent, right? Even if I have no intent to harm or I don't recognize an intention to help, I'm still doing the action which creates the energy out, which again would cycle back, as you mentioned. The the interesting thing about it is, though, that I think that it shows up in different philosophies and different religions. And maybe the example is heaven and hell,
Mhm.
uh, sins, no sins. And, in the Catholic religion, um, everyone's born with original sin until they're baptized, cleansed for this life, which means they've brought in past karma that we need to wash away so that you can live this life and start fresh. Um, so the concept, I think, is embedded with different words, like we mentioned before, uh, where dharma is the duty, and it shows up in the Bible, it shows up in the Quran, it shows up in the Vedas, and it has a framework of a value system for how to have a lifestyle, how to live a good life on this planet. And karma is that piece that's so interrelated with that, that then gives us feedback. It's like me writing a draft chapter for something, sending it out to a few people and saying, hey, give me some feedback. Well, I'll get feedback, all right. No doubt about that. And that's what karma is in that way. It gives us feedback as if we are performing our dharma, we've made choices, and now we're going to get feedback as to whether that was spot on or whether we need to make some adjustments, or maybe we just need to do over completely and try again. And that's talking a lot about our personal, individual
Mm.
dharma and karma. But we also have that past life karma that come in with us. And we have karma that may manifest based on what we're doing now. So we can get some quick turnaround, or it might get pushed into a future life. So there are really three different types of karma that happen, in addition to the collective karma. And I know we talked a little bit about that, and you had some great thoughts about it before we started recording. And I was wishing we were recording about collective karma. Could you do a redo on that so that we can all
I,
hear it?
I'm not sure, but something you said made me think of, the Thich Nhat Hanh, one of his speeches that I listened to for a previous episode. And it's that printout, that receipt that you were just talking about. It's very often we're not really recognizing that what we're seeing coming at us in the present moment is the printout, the receipt, the receipts we're getting from past actions that we may or may not be able to relate. And it's that he's, that moment where he says, if someone asks you, my dear friend, has the most wonderful moment in your life arrived? And you say, oh, no, not yet, but I'm sure it's coming. I'm sure that most wonderful moment in my life is on its way anytime. But if that's if that's where we've been for 20 years, we're not going to see that moment in another 20 years. That moment is now. And when we embrace that moment now, that continues to, we have to, but it's that believe and be here now before you can, we have to create that now before we can see that receipt, that printout.
Yeah, and it really builds into mindfulness, doesn't it?
Really, yeah. As far as that idea of the individual versus the collective, I think, well, this isn't what I said at all, but this is what is coming to me now. So this is what I will say. It goes back to the cycles. I was thinking earlier today about different belief systems. I was raised in a belief system that taught me that there was a heaven and a hell. We live our lives on this timeline, we die, and then that's where we go forever. And when I look at the structure of the universe and the energies and how they flow and how they work and the cycles of the planets, the celestial beings, and the regenerative qualities of the earth and the healing properties of the earth, that really started to become less and less real to me based on what I was seeing and feeling and understanding. And we go through these cycles as part of our karmic evolution, our dharmic evolution, karmic, dharmic, they go together. And so to randomly weave and find my way back possibly to the question that you asked is, we have those inner cycles that we go through on our own time and our own
Mhm.
evolution, and our own soul's evolutionary experience and our own ego's evolutionary experience, but we also go through that on a collective level where we also have to experience together, how do we evolve, how do we grow, how do we create something that we haven't yet seen, how do we take the best things of our past, because we have good things, that we can, we have created the up to this point where we are, cities where people live, in communities and music and art and, education systems, and we've created all of these things. How do we're just at a tipping point where we're being asked to transform and change. So what does that look like for us together? And that starts nuclear, the nuclear revolution within the self. That isn't what I said at all earlier, but that is what came out right now.
This is the present moment. We are in a different space at this time. You know, some of it then about the collective karma. And we have collective dharma too. We talked about that when we were talking about it a few episodes ago. When we think about the collective karma and we become aware of the the energetic reflection that our actions produce, becoming very mindful about what we choose to do, say, and think becomes more and more important. The ego may want to try to manipulate that a little bit, but that gets back to that authenticity. So there's a piece there that's something different that we could talk about maybe in another episode. But if people are listening right now, and the question you might have in your head is, well, I'm living in this time, in this environment, with this socio-political environment, and why am I here now? What is it about my karma that needed to come to fruition, mature, to bring me to earth during this time? And that is very personal. It also takes a lot of internal clarity. So, if anyone's interested in asking themselves that question and doing it gently with compassion, you will find that there are multiple reasons likely for that. And when you juxtapose your dharma to the collective karma that we can see, we feel, we are, like you mentioned, the fish in the water. Our collective is the water, basically, all of the environment that we're in, that energetic environment. And all the fish are swimming and moving their bodies and creating vibrations and energetic flow. And sometimes we're at the mercy of that, and sometimes we cause it. And why we are here now is an interesting question to contemplate if anyone wants some homework.
Yeah, and regardless of that in any time, place, the idea of being here, making it through this portal
Mhm.
into the human experience, the human body, this finite space, is to act in service to the boundless soul.
Yes.
And that looks like, again, we talked about that in our episode on Dharma, but that is um, as many minds, as many ways, as many imaginations, as many things that you can conjure, at least on this plane. That is the what we're here to do. That's the portal. And so
Mhm.
you may not, and I think that we can spend a lifetime trying to figure it out. Why am I here? Why am I here now? You know, be here now. Take that breath now, in the
Mm-hmm.
now. And again, that going back to that conversation, or that talk that was given by Thich Nhat Hanh, that when you can do that so deeply, you touch the windows of the soul of all space, of all time. That is, you know, it's such a, that's what's so wild about being a soul in a human body, is that you are both things. It is just a concept. So it is the experience of being human, of having that you know, being able to be so present in this moment in the human body, in that physical form, that in that microcosm you become timeless and experience the macro.
Yes. And it takes coming into the micro and then evolving in a way that boundaries and barriers begin to dissolve, which then provides clarity. And then that connection becomes unified. And we're back to the word yoga. Mm-hmm.
And can I point out the juxtaposition of that experience to what we see happening in our world today, with, you know, launching rockets and sending projectiles into the ocean to figure it out and to
Mm-hmm.
seek and to find, and the only place you need to go to open the windows to the macro experience is to go within. That's the
Yes.
irony of what's happening out there today.
Yes. Which gets us back to intention and also, discernment and clarity of knowing. And when you when you go, we talk about that. It's going inward. And I've had lots of people ask me over time, uh, well, how do I do that? How do I get there? And you mentioned, I think, maybe it was a couple episodes ago, that the path is in front of us, and as soon as we can see it, it dissolves. And in some ways, that's what happens because the human body, with the mind and all of the mechanisms that we have to make this form function, is equipped with a boundary that once we do start to experience that unique sense of samadhi, the mind as a recognition of it causes it to become more elusive for that moment. So it gets back to what we talked about before, is to be just to be.
To be present.
And it takes a lot of discipline to do that, because the temptation is always to see it and experience it a little deeper, and then suddenly it's gone.
And hold
And
on to it. And
mhm,
and
hold on to it. That's right. Yeah. Yeah,
and
that's what I was thinking.
you know, to that point, you know, we're traveling on that path, right? Our dharmic
Mhm.
path. And we're never off of it. Sometimes we're experiencing more karma than other times. But why is this road so bumpy and horrible and ugly? And this is not the place I want to be. And we realized that, well, we didn't take that exit over there, or, you know, we were wanting to get there so fast. I insisted on going this direction because, you know,
Mhm.
I'm going straight ahead. That's the way I'm going to go. So we're, you know, until we're living in that moment, you know, bringing it to that point, and
Mhm.
we're just cruising along, and it's like, oh, this isn't working. I'm going to go this way because I'm not tied, I'm not married to this path. I'm not, you know, my goal is something higher. My goal is to get to that destination. So I'm going to allow new information to come in. I'm going to take that new information and I'm going to reflect on, well, what choice do I want to make now in this moment, rather than hanging on to
Yeah.
a choice um, that I made, and now I'm going to be tied to that and go headlong into that. There's so many uh, variables that allow that there's so many beautiful opportunities for us to take that path of least resistance of dharma. I
Yeah.
probably took you off of, I probably took that down a path where we're wandering now, like, where is that going?
I think the path that we just went down with you is one that makes a lot of sense. Sometimes we think of karma as being punishment,
Hmm.
or
Yeah.
we think of it as being a great reward, right? One or the other. If we come to a middle ground, it's really about feedback. And I think we started with that and we touched on it throughout our episode today about how karma is really feedback about our dharmic path. How are we doing? Are we on are we going okay? Have we taken one of those roads that is bumpy? Um, if it's bumpy, why are you still here? Maybe let's reconsider something, right? And try to find that path that has a little more easeful way of being. And I love that word that you brought into us. Um, and that was a few episodes ago as well. So I'm still living in the past here, apparently, this morning. So yeah, I think we have more to talk about, more to dive into about karma that we could take forward if you're up for it.
Yeah, I think because there's karma yoga, I would love to also get a little deeper into our birth charts that show us that can tell us a
Yes,
lot about what our dharmic work is, and some of the karmas that we may come through, and also through the practices of Kundalini yoga. We can burn through that karma before we meet it. How can we prepare our self-sensory being to meet that and to stay true to our dharmic purpose? So I think
yes,
there's a lot more there that we can go into. So that'll be fun too.
that sounds fun. I'm up for that. Okay.
Great conversation. Just, I
Mhm.
really appreciate being able to go through these topics that we've discussed for a long time, and share them with folks. And, again, we welcome thoughts, feedback, and appreciate everyone who came to listen today.
Yes, please add comments, send us emails with questions or comments. Um, Give us some feedback.
Like,
We've
share,
sent some
subscribe,
energy your way. Yes, yes.
and
And
then see you here in another week
mhm.
with some more good stuff.
Like, subscribe, ring the bell, and stay in touch.
Right. Satnam.
Sat Nam and Namaste.